Question. Hi Kim, I have a question about time perception. Why do kids experience the present moment in an almost timeless way? The level of immersion in the present felt very different in childhood compared to how I experienced life in my teenage years, let alone as an adult. I feel that overthinking tends to be one of the biggest obstacles to being present and perceiving the moment as we did in childhood. Also, I'd like to know if this has happened to you as well, and whether your tendency to overthink has diminished as you progressed on your spiritual path. Thank you. Well, let me start with the last part here. Has your tendency to overthink diminished as you progressed on your spiritual path? Absolutely yes, dramatically so. I used to, when I was younger, I was Mr. Overthinking. I was overthinking everything. And it's actually interesting to think back to what the person is saying, because I remember as a child that, of course, I would have these moments of just being in the now. But I also, even as a child, I still had a tendency to think a lot. So I had to contrast. It's not that I was always in the now as a child. But when I became a teenager, it actually became easier for me, because in my teenage years I overcame certain fears. And interestingly, when I was, I don't know, around 12 years old, I found an old book that my grandfather had. And it was about a totally different topic, but there was, in the beginning of the book, there was this verse: "Enjoy the moment, herein lies happiness. Once gone, it shall never return." And those 4 lines had a seismic impact on my state of consciousness for some reason. Throughout my teenage years, I really was very focused on this: enjoy the moment. And sometimes in high school, I would just sit there, I'd just be present in class, I would just observe without having any thoughts, I would just really be present in the moment. And it actually lasted throughout my teenage years until I had children. Because when I had 2 small children in diapers, I failed to handle that situation very well, so that I could enjoy the moment. And I think for me, what was difficult with the overthinking was when I was responsible for other people. That was difficult. When I was a teenager and just responsible for myself, it was easier. But of course, what is it that causes us to overthink? It's we have subconscious selves. So what has happened to me over the years, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that this, of course, can happen to everybody who uses the Master's teachings on this, is that as I've dissolved some of these subconscious selves, overthinking has pretty much gone away. I'm not saying I'm not thinking, but I really think I'm no longer overthinking. Because what I used to remember is this obsessive compulsive process of thinking about issues and problems. Like I had to solve this problem in my mind, and sometimes it was world issues that, of course, I had no direct influence on. And so that has pretty much gone away. And I am much more in the now. I'm much more not really planning ahead. But of course, I do think ahead with certain things I have to do. Like if I have a conference coming up in 2 months, there's certain steps I need to take. So it's not that. It's not like I'm just sitting there in bliss all the time and not worrying about tomorrow. Of course, there are things we have to do in life. And so what I would say is that time perception, as the person is asking about, why do kids experience the present moment in an almost timeless way? It's because they are not yet feeling that sense of responsibility, or that sense that's put on us that we need to have a plan. Even though they probably have been asked a question, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And what question is that to ask of a 5-year-old? But I remember being asked that question at a very early age, and it was part of what sometimes caused me to overthink as a child. So I think the less people are thinking ahead, the more they can be in the moment. Of course, the other thing with children is they don't have as much of a past to worry about. Not so many, hopefully, not so many things have happened to them. And as we grow older, we have more of a past that's pulling us that way, and we have more sense of responsibility that is pulling us towards the future, and that means we can't be in the now. But what I would say is that, it is, of course, it's all done because as we have more of a past, we create subconscious selves. And as we have build this sense of responsibility towards the future, we also build subconscious selves to deal with that. So you dissolve those subconscious selves, and you have less of a pull towards the past, you have less of a pull towards the future. I mean, I can see today, yes, I have certain responsibilities, like conferences coming up or books to be published, and I'm, taking steps towards that, but I'm not really thinking that far ahead. I'm not thinking about, so where do you see yourself being in 5 years? I would have no answer to that question. I really honestly wouldn't. I have no specific long-term goal for my life other than my ascension at some point, but I don't have a time frame there. So I'm just giving the service I can give to the masters and pretty much being in the moment and flowing with it. It's not like I have a plan that's outlining what I'm going to do for the next 5 years. I just spontaneously something comes up. Oh, it's time to do this. Like yesterday, my wife was telling me about some abuse of women that was taking place, and I thought, oh, we should have a decree for these kind of judgments so we could create invocations for these kind of issues. And I sat down and got the decree in a very short amount of time. So I have a lot more of that spontaneous reaction. But what I want to say about this thing about the now, I mean, a number of years ago I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I know some people have had good results with it, but I've also think many people find that after some time, it can almost become a stress to try and be in the now, because people are sort of, you can become focused on being in the now. And if you start thinking about being in the now, it takes you out of the now. Because what you're doing is you're creating a subconscious self that says, I should be in the now. So the approach that I'm always taking to this is, yes, I agree that being more in the now, you can't be told in the now because you have to think ahead, but being more in the now is natural. But instead of trying to force myself into being in the now, I am looking at what pulls me out of the natural state, and that's of course these subconscious selves and the accumulated energies in my subconscious mind, in my energy field. So once I dissolve the energy, once I dissolve the cells, it's like my mind naturally goes back to focusing on the now. So you see what I'm trying to say here? It's like I've seen some people who take this idea of the power of now, and they're trying to use the mind to force themselves into being in the now, but it's actually the mind that is forcing themselves out of the now. So they're just creating more of a strain, or they're pretending to be in the now. And so my focus always is resolve the psychology, and then you will naturally be in that state. And that's what all of my videos, so many of my videos where I talk about these subconscious selves, that's really what they're all about. Dissolve the stuff that pulls you away from the now. And in terms of time perception, I don't know if I have any. My perception of time has changed dramatically as I walked the path, because I used to be much more focused on time, where everything was driven on time. I used to have much more of this being pulled back into the past by some situation that came up seemingly out of nowhere. I was reminded of some unpleasant situation from the past, and I was pulled back there. And this, of course, doesn't happen when you don't have the selves. And then I was also reminded of some kind of responsibility, something I had to do, and I was pulled towards the future. And even when I first found the spiritual path, especially with Ascended Master teachings, but even in TM, In other words, you find a spiritual path, and before that, as you were growing up, you didn't have a sense of your purpose with life. Now you find a spiritual path and you have the sense that, oh, you can reach a higher state of consciousness and you can qualify for your ascension. And then you almost feel like you have to focus on that, you have to plan for that, you have to plot a course, a path that takes you towards that goal. And that can become a strain as well. And that over time has also faded away. As I said, I'm not really thinking ahead. Where do you see yourself being in 5 years? I have no answer to that question because I'm just focusing on the immediate service and what comes up tomorrow. And I might get some inspiration from the masters tomorrow to do something, and then I'll do it. But I'm not thinking about what that might mean today. Why would I? It's like time. Instead of being divided up into past and future, instead of being plotted out on a linear timeline where things happen in certain sequence, I think time has just become spherical for me. It's like, it's almost like instead of being this string of moments reaching into the future, there's just really the present moment. And then I know, of course, that yes, in 2 seconds or 2 hours or 2 days, there'll be another present moment. But it's almost like every moment is an event in itself. And instead of looking forward, I'm just focused on what's here now, what I'm doing now. And then I know something else will come up, but I'm not thinking about it. When it comes up, I'll act on it. Until then, it really doesn't exist. Even though I, of course, intellectually know that time moves on and there will be a new situation tomorrow, but then I just deal with that as it comes up.